Hello, Requelers. I think that's what we're going to go with. Sounds cool. It's Tyler here. Welcome to the Requel Podcast. I'm going to make some changes to the Requel Podcast. I think it's time we get out there and just not be an exclusive Patreon discussional podcast. I'm working on something here. So, just got out of seeing the NUN3, or I've heard some people say the NUN Chapter 2, but I am a fan of the Conjuring universe. I like the idea that the films are, faith-based and it's about faith overcoming evil. This is a discussion on the film. So for a review, go check out a different podcast. But I'm going to break this one down and kind of talk about a little bit. Talk about some errors, maybe you would say. Not errors in the storytelling, but just some pitches like usual here on the Requel Podcast. And let's get into it. First of all, going into the NUN3, there's some things like if you are following the universe, you already know. One, that the demon, Valak, who has yet to be named in universe as in the timeline that we're following, is connected to Frenchie. It has been said that that is where the Warrens first encounter the demon, is with Frenchie. Now, Frenchie is in the film, and part of the big climax is the battle with the demon and Frenchie. But the sad undertow part of the film, it could have had a little bit more of a tease at the end, as far as if you're paying attention, he's not okay. The demon's not defeated. There's a part in this where Sister Irene is battling it and she gets confronted. I almost thought they were going to let her die and have this be the first movie where the evil kind of wins. That's kind of Annabelle creation in a way too, is evil kind of won in that one. If you're following the universe, you remember in Annabelle creation there's the nun sister who talked about being at a certain convent at a certain time in the 50s, and the way that this plot line moves with the idea that Frenchie is moving from church to church looking for something, and basically it makes me curious which convent and when that sister was at, because the nun is teased with her. I need to brush up on that. And I need to look at the timeline of when the Warrens supposedly encountered Frenchie, thus exorcising him and freeing him of the demon, because that is supposed to be when they encountered Valak and actually got Valak out of Frenchie. That would then later, fall into the Conjuring 2. Anyways, the overarching villain, if you look at this as a universe, is Valak the demon, touching pretty much almost all the films in some way. But so my biggest thing is the fact that, the movie ends, and this one's a lot better than the first Nun. I will say that. Much like Annabelle and Annabelle Creation, where Creation, of course, look at the director. You have the awesome Sandberg directing it compared to Leonetti, who directed the first one. But anyways, this film does a job. It's Michael Chavez and his third Conjuring entry, since they backdoored with one scene the Curse of La Llorona into the universe. It's kind of like the stepchild that no one talks about. But he's back with, and he did Conjuring 3, which is okay, but that one's too much fiction in my based on reality style horror, even though we know it's all fiction pretty much. If you are a fan of the franchise, you're going to enjoy this film. I enjoyed the film. I do think that the one thing that's missing is the idea of just having a bunch of nuns walking around, and the nun, quote unquote, is there in them, and they can't figure out who she is. I feel like they tried to tease that in the first movie, but it just wasn't really there with the directing. I think you could do one more Nun movie, the Nun Chapter 3, and that's the one where you would have to bring in the Warrens, as there is a tease at the end of this film with the Warrens in a post-credit scene But I'm not sure if that's supposed to be like them leading into, their encounter with Maurice / Frenchie, or if that's teeing up the Conjuring 4. So one thing that's always boggled me with these films is the fact that they do a job of setting a story within a story that would make an amazing movie. I think I said this before on a previous episode when we reviewed The Conjuring 3, but inside the first Nun film, they talk about the building of that monastery and how it was like built over a gate to hell kind of thing, and the guy who built it. That would have been an amazing film. The whole time you think this holy dude is building this great temple, but really at the twist end he kills everybody and is basically trying to raise the devil. Wow. Could you imagine that as the technical first film in this series? It would have been amazing. It would have been crazy. Something different. Inside Annabelle creation, you have the whole story about what the Mullins family goes through when they accidentally bring a demon to their home because they're trying to bring back their daughter. That should have been Annabelle creation. And then they should have had another Annabelle. And that should have been basically the orphan story that we got. That was Annabelle creation. So you kind of blew two movies in one movie without really filling it all out. I'm just saying, there's a lot you could have mined here. Now, as far as where to move forward in the franchise, technically the Valak stuff ends at The Conjuring 2. The Conjuring 3 was too much fictitious bullcrap, and it really upset me. I've only watched it the once, and I don't think I'll ever go back and watch it again. Also, it wasn't James Wan, and I love James Wan's directing. So, my thought is, do you do something else with the preacher, maybe, who was in the La Llorona? What do we do? Where are we going with stuff, people? But anyways, that's my quick thoughts on just the universe. I do think they need to have an ending point in mind to not just, completely run this into ground. It has been an ongoing universe that's done well, unless you do some other, spin-off film much like La Llorona, where, you get another preacher character that kind of plays the role and, does something that way. But, all right, check us out. What would you do with the Conjuring universe? Oh, yeah, there's supposed to be a TV series at some point. What's that going to be? It's not going to be like Sam and Dean, is it? Who knows? Okay, so I'm back with my pitch. I've kind of redefined my pitch a little bit. Okay? I recently spoke about the NUN3. Or the Conjuring 4, which I think should be the same movie. We know that the Conjuring 4 right now is called Last Rites. And I really think what they need to do is they need to do a nice prequel to The Conjuring and sequel to the Nun. Okay? And I've kind of redefined my pitch a little bit. What we know is that Valak eventually gets named and destroyed in The Conjuring 2. Valak really has no presence in The Conjuring 1 or Annabelle, but is present in Annabelle creation. Of course, the Nun 2. But what we do know is that Frenchie is a doomed character. Maurice. We know that Maurice, once again, Valak was only subdued and stopped in the Nun and keeps going. And before they ruin the franchises and run them in the ground, they need to bring it full circle. Now, The Conjuring 4 / the Nun 3. My pitch. You open up with Valak doing something. Okay? We need a big opening that's creepy. We need creepy. Alright? At this point, Frenchie has married, I think it was Kate and her daughter, okay? And they have gone on to another place where she's teaching and he's working. Okay? And what happens is, what we need is a big scene at the beginning. Kind of like, it's back. So we need that scene. What else we need is we need to take advantage of the fact that Nun is a nun. Like, I mean, I need a director that's going to dial in to this kind of fear factor. There's a bunch of nuns and Valak is openly walking. I would also use the actress that plays the nun / Valak and get some scenes of her moving around out of makeup just for the eeriness and creepiness of having someone that looks like the demon who's not. I really think that's something that's not been used when it should have been. Okay, so that'd be a great kind of horrible scene where maybe we bring back Thaisa, however you pronounce her name, as the same character she's been for the past 2 Nun movies, and for some reason just now her name left me. Great. But we bring her back, and this is where it gets a little crazy, everybody. Is your mid-scene, or maybe even towards the beginning, you have her, Valak, kill her. Maybe in the scene where there's a bunch of nuns hiding and they can't tell, and Valak murders her around all the other nuns and disappears. Pardon me. And what happens is then Frenchie, Maurice, who's being tormented by Valak, who's using him to try to take more human form, basically, as we know, as we learn, because this is what I didn't do last time, I pitched off the top of my head, I didn't go back and reassess the Conjuring, is they say he murdered his wife and daughter. So this is going to be the darkest of the Conjuring films, because this is where Valak is really at its most powerful, as it's going to destroy Frenchie's wife, Kate, and the little girl that we just met, who was adorable. And then, of course, you know, the way that it's the Conjuring 4 is you're going to have the Warrens brought in. We'll bring back the church. Maybe the bishop, the father, who was now a bishop from the Nun series, calls, gets Father Gordon or whatever, brings in the Warrens. We have the battle at the end because, once again, the church is not there to perform the exorcism. The Warrens end up having to do it. And this is where Ed, gets hurt, and then Lorraine has her massive vision of Ed's death that puts her down for a while, but they end up stopping it. Frenchie, Maurice, dies in the process of the exorcism, and they think Valak is destroyed, but really not, because we know that Valak doesn't get destroyed till the Conjuring 2. So you kind of tie up all these loose end stories and these characters, bring it full circle to then where you could sit back one day and watch the Conjuring films in a very interesting linear fashion. Starting with The Nun, The Nun 2, Annabelle Creation, Annabelle, then maybe The Nun 3 / Conjuring 4. We'll call it Conjuring 4 because we know that's been announced. And then The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2, and then that horrible film, The Conjuring 3. That is my more accurate pitch for what we could do. Bringing the themes of, we always have the theme about religious faith beating evil, and that's great, and that's here. But this is where evil takes its biggest stride, and we really have to push our faith forward because our heroes are not invincible.